It is a sunny morning in Spain. Welcome to Barcelona. Welcome to the final round of Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS Endurance Cup. We are getting set for qualifying. The circuit will be live within the next 10 minutes. There's a point for pole within each class, and then we look forward to the 3-hour race later on today, which will determine the assorted champion. Silver has pretty much been decided, but in the overall situation, this Mercedes leads. It's Jules Gounon, Raffaele Marciello and Danny Juncadella sharing this car, and the opposition comes from the Lynx Ferrari. Antonio Fuoco, the only driver that can win the championship from that Ferrari, but it's going to be a fascinating fight, not only between those two on track and for points, but with everybody else factored into the race itself. 79 points, plays 68. Daniel Serra and Davide Rigon not here, so Antonio Fuoco has different co-drivers for the weekend. Alessio Rivera and Alessandro Pierguidi, reigning endurance champion, will join him in that car, and he's got a good combination of co-drivers therefore to try to help him take this crown. It's going to be a tall order, but it is doable. Pro-Am is up for grabs as well. This car, the 188 Garage 59 McLaren of Enrique Chavez, Miguel Ramos and Alexander West, chasing the Louis Macchiels, Andrea Bertolini and Stefano Costatini. Now, all the Ferrari drivers really need to do is just finish, and they are going to be able to net the points, but finishing is not always a given in this championship, especially with 48 cars, and it's going to be a very crowded circuit, that is for sure. We've also got the Gold Cup up for grabs, where the Inception Racing McLaren takes on the Iron Dames Ferrari. Brendan Arieb, Ollie Milroy, Frederick Chantor for the drivers for Inception Racing. Brendan Arieb flying in, having been racing in America. He did the 2.5 hours required and then hopped on a plane, and here he is ready for qualifying. And they come into this race 9 points ahead. The McLaren drivers are Rahal Fry, Sarah Bovey and Michel Gatting, who of course had that big haul of points by winning at the Total Energies 24 Hours of Spa. And then the silver, which has been mopped up by Jean-Baptiste Simonard, Thomas Neubauer and Benji Goethe for WRT as we go into this final weekend, really, within certainly European Fanatec GT racing for WRT and Audi, with that relationship which has had something like 30+ titles. It's been a remarkable relationship. So track, as I say, is getting ready to welcome cars. We'll be live on the circuit within the next 7 minutes or so. David Addison and John Watson are trackside. The sun is shining. There's barely a cloud in the sky. It's not that warm yet, so cool temperatures for the teams this morning, Watty.
I might have to contradict you there, because we saw on screen a few minutes ago track temperature 33.2 and ambient 23. It does not feel like either. I mean, I went on the track and did a couple of laps just as a warm-up to get ready to come into the commentary booth. Certainly wasn't 33.2. Otherwise, the soles of my shoes would be melting. I don't know what the temperatures are, but they're not as warm as they were indicated on that graphic we saw a few minutes earlier. If we go back 24 hours, track temperature is about 16 Celsius, ambient 10. That's what it feels like right now. And if those are the track conditions that we had 24 hours ago now, well, then we're going to see some pretty impressive qualifying. But remember, the car that's principal challenger, Marciello, they were only 10th quickest yesterday morning, as opposed to the number 2 Mercedes, the Get Speed Maro Engel, and a 1 minute 44.3. That's going to be the benchmark time, and I wouldn't be surprised if somebody might nip into the 143s. It'll be a stunning qualifying, 3 qualifying sessions. And of course, key to all of this is new tyres, which very, very few teams ran yesterday. You've just had a look at the Silver Cup Audi, the WRT entry, and the standings there. This number 71 Ferrari then, Antonio Fuoco, one of the 3 drivers, but Alessandro Pierguidi and then Alessio Rivera will go first in Q1 and Q2. Remember, it's 1 driver, 1 session, and we'll talk about the order, certainly for the top 20, within the individual sessions, but the grid is based on the average of the 3 drivers. So what we have in, for example, Q2 and Q3 as an order isn't necessarily the grid order. It's very easy for Q1, of course, because there's only the 1 time. That is the Iron Dames Ferrari, and Rahal Frey is going to be on board first. So the Ferrari waiting for the signal to be given for the fast lane to open, then the tyres will be put on. 15 minutes. Now, on a lap like this, John, that's nearly 5K long, you don't get many laps in that quarter of an hour, do you? No, you don't, and you've got 48 cars all trying to do the very same thing. Look for that one clear lap to be able to maximize the potential of a fresh set of Pirelli rubber, and I don't know how they're going to manage it. There will be some 1 or 2 teams that will manage to make so, but It's just a very, very busy racetrack, and you get clumps of cars coming together, and that you can do the first sector purple, the second sector purple. You get to the third sector, forget it, just back out of it. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for everybody. It's frustrating for the drivers, for the teams. Equally frustrating for us in the commentary booth, because we're building it all up.
And traffic is going to be a problem, and especially in that last sector, turn 13, down to the chicane. It's a fiddly chicane. In GT4 yesterday, people were bold enough to overtake, but in a slightly wider GT3 car, it's not that easy. And so the drivers are struggling a little bit in that chicane in terms of getting through the traffic. And if you're on a quick lap and you catch cars there, then, of course, it's going to ruin your lap. Now, John, back to your weather. This feels
yes, I might call it a finger problem. There is the correct ambient track, and suddenly the ambient's gone up. That's gone up from 11 to 15. I don't know what's going on with our weather reported today. I mean, it's not like it was in 1987 when we got the hurricane warnings, or lack of them. I don't think there's a hurricane going to come through the circuit today. We've seen the destruction that's taken place in Florida. I think that one's still somewhere mid-Atlantic. It
can stay there, I think. We are, I think, in store for a dry day. The forecast has been that today's going to be really warm. So it's been a very pleasant weekend thus far. Let's see what today has in store. But it is, I still reckon, a chilly morning as the drivers are strapped in ready for Q1. The fast lane is open. Now, that means that people can go down to the end of the pit lane. Do you want to be first out? Do you want to be last out in this? Do you want to be at the back of the queue? Do you want to be at the front, risking catching the last cars out of the pit lane?
The problem is if you're ahead of the queue and you go out on your brand new set of Pirelli tyres and you come out of turn 16 all set to launch it down for your first flying lap, you're going to find a line of cars all still filtering out of the pit lane. So what do? Do you wait until the end, until everybody's gone out, and you catch the train as they come in? Whichever way you look at it, it's stick the tail on the donkey. There's no clear way of knowing that you're going to get a clear lap. All you can hope for is that the team can give you some assistance. They have got a tracker, a circuit tracker, and they can see how many cars are in different sectors of the circuit at any given time. But really, it's very much down to the hands of the driver just to try and make the best. 48 of them at one point in a 15-minute qualifying segment. Difficult indeed, difficult for all.
So there, number 51, Ferrari, Miguel Molina, who is joined this weekend by Nicholas Nielsen as ever. But Giancarlo Fisichella drafted into the car, and he's going to go in Q3. And the Sky Tempesta Mercedes, that's had a tough season. Eddie Cheever and Chris Frogger back with Jonathan Hui for this weekend. But they'd like to go out on a high. They've learnt a lot this year. They've learnt it's a cruel sport coming into this after great success in the days of their Ferrari. But it's been a tough year for Sky Tempesta Racing all round.
Yeah, I think that the change from Ferrari to a Mercedes, I suppose you'd naturally think you're going to get a car that'll give us an uplift in overall results. And it's been more difficult, I think, than they anticipated. So maybe they can have a good finale here this weekend.
So that is the Maro Engel, Luca Stoltz, Stein Scotthorst Mercedes. Interesting that they're going to put Maro Engel out first. Normally we talk about the faster driver going in the third part of qualifying, but it's showing Stein Scotthorst as being the driver to do that final segment of qualifying. That number 5 Haupt Racing Team Mercedes of Florian Scholze, Arjun Maini and Hubert Haupt, the man that owns the team. So the circuit is clear. The sighting laps by the officials completed. And so in, what have we got? About 1 second's time. Yep, now bang on money. The green flag is shown and nobody ventures down the pit lane.
It is absolutely deafening in the pit lane. Nobody's even fired a motor up. Certainly not we can hear in the commentary booth. And certainly no one has driven down to the pit lane exit. The thundering herd, as you may describe it, will shortly be making their way down as JP Motorsport McLaren fits a set of Pirellis, as it does everybody. It's a one-tire formula. So we've already had 40 seconds of the session and no activity in the pit lane, let alone on the circuit.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because they know they've got limited track time. It really is going to be one shot. But you go out, get temperature into the tyres, do a lap, and that's it.
Yeah.
and then complain about traffic, of course, when everybody's out at the same time. So, yeah, you've paid your money. There's the track for you, and nobody ventures out. I tell you a lie. AGS events are going to be the pioneers. Nico Gomar, in his Lamborghini, is out onto the circuit. Hooray.
And a nice, clear circuit he has. But will not be clear by the time he completes this out lap, because there will be, I suspect, a train of cars making their way out. Christopher Mies amongst them, and the Sanderlock Junior team. And where did they end up yesterday? I'm just trying to look down to see. They were 19th. Christopher Mies set the time in that session 24 hours ago, 1:45.6. Contrast that to the time that Maro Engel set in the Get Speed Performance Mercedes-AMG GT3 of a 1:44.3. That's the time, certainly these first group of qualifiers will be, I believe, aiming at, whether it's achievable in the time available with the traffic on the track, as we get now just under 12 minutes, under 13 minutes to go.
Number 20 Mercedes, Ian Loggy, Valentin Pierberg, Dominic Baumann sharing that car. And the clock ticks on down. Very, very few takers, as you can see. Now, it's not essential necessarily to do your ultimate time in this, because you are looking at an average, and in some cases it will be the slower driver, but you do need to get the car out. You do need to have had the car qualified by each driver, so you can't sit out a session. Therefore, you've got to get out there, and gradually now the queue is starting to build through the fast lane, and cars are heading onto the circuit.
The Inception McLaren, Brendan Narib, has arrived from, I suppose he flew out of Atlanta into Barcelona. How he managed that, I would love to know his itinerary, but after he did a stint in that event, he bailed out of the event, got to whichever port he was using, caught his flight, and hopefully he's got the cobwebs out of his eyes.
We'll sleep well tonight. So the car's out on track. We'll start looking at lap times shortly, but don't forget that individual qualifying sessions are of interest, but it's the combined that gives you the grid in the end.
So all I can say is gradually competitors are making their way out onto the track. There's been a sort of lack of almost vitality in the pit lane. You look down, the two Dynamic Motorsport Porsches still sitting there, the two Garage 59 McLarens, the 32 Audi, in fact nearly all the WRT Audis all lined up in the pit lane, and they're just slowly beginning to roll as I speak. So I would imagine that people would have been bursting to get out onto the track at the earliest opportunity.
Yeah, it really has got a very, very sleepy feel to the pit lane. There's barely any urgency whatsoever to send people out, as we've been saying. Right, so let's focus on those that are on the track. Nico Gomar is going to set the target time, such as it will be. As you look there at number 88, Raffaele Marciello gets set, ready to go. And Nico Gomar turns then now up towards turn 13 at the top of the lap. And then you turn through the right-hander, you drop downhill. There's a chicane here. This is the pretty narrow, fiddly chicane. It is possible to overtake, but you really do have to be bold. And if you get it wrong, of course, your exit is compromised, and then you're wrong all the way down here into turn 16, up towards the timing line. And Nicolo Gomar goes through this Lamborghini that is part of the Gold Cup, goes over the timing line now.
Well, they did a 146.3 yesterday. That's 148. So 148.8.
Oh, the spin up.
Oh, not all right, but dear me.
That is 159. That's Manuel Maldonado, I think, isn't it?
Turn 5. So what did he do wrong? Was that it was contact? Oh, dearie me. You would think that dive bombing down to the inside into turn 5. Was somebody asleep at the wheel, or does somebody just think they can get away with it?
Looked like Florian Scholz's Mercedes that he tangled with. This is Mirko Bortolotti. Now this ought to be a quick car. We didn't yesterday see the best out of this Lamborghini because they were saving tyres, only running old rubber. But Mirko Bortolotti, who's been a GT star for Lamborghini and a DTM star, he's got a LMDH program beckoning as well. He will come up towards the timing line shortly, but he's down at the moment, heading through turn 7 and then the right at 8. And he's up the curb, and now he's up the hill.
Up through turn 9. Track, of course, hasn't been in use since the back end of Saturday evening, and we know that racetracks, the personality character changes. Purple middle sector, that's a little bit of, I suppose, for Mirko Bortolotti, he'll be happy to see that on his onboard dash to tell him that he's got that purple sector, sector 2. So the track needs to come to life again itself, and it does that by having cars run over the race line. Will begin to clean up a little bit. He's been now, that purple sector has been beaten. I can't see which car we've got on that because they're not getting the timing and scoring in the sectors, although on screen.
Yeah, Mirko Bortolotti then up toward the line. He's done 2 personals and an absolute best, and that therefore is a 1:45.172 to go top of the times. Jack Aitken and Albert Costa sharing the car with him. 88 Mercedes on a mission then, which is the championship leading car. Raffaele Marciello is at the wheel. Let us see where this puts him at the end of the first sector. Green is good, purple is even better, and it's green, so Raffaele Marciello is on a good lap.
But he's got one of the Garage 159 McLarens directly ahead of him, so he will, I suspect, try and decide where. Well, there's 2 cars. We've got an Audi, in fact. The Audi, well, that's going to giving him clear track, so that was good consideration. So Marciello gets through, no time lost, but then there's the McLaren up ahead. Whether he's going to catch that going into turn 10, but more likely it'll be through that final sector, which is the frustrating part of this Barcelona circuit. There's nothing very much you can do. This is the run down from turn 9 down into turn 10, a big heavy braking area. Then the swing to the left, this revised turn 10, a much better part of the circuit now than the previous incarnation. Then the long, never-ending turn 12, just sit there, wait for the car to bite, then throttle. So he's probably going to get a clear enough run because the McLaren's sufficiently far ahead going into 14. Then the cut back to the right to 15. Bertolotti has gone purple in the meantime on a second flying lap, and that middle sector, Marciello fractionally down, and now Bortolotti's middle sector time has also been surpassed. So Marciello comes across, goes third quickest.
That incident, by the way, we saw between Scholzer and Maldonado is going to be investigated at the end of Q1. So Bortolotti is ahead of clean. Marciello third on a 1:45.284. Christopher Mies has now done an absolute best in the sector, and Mirko Bortolotti quicker still, 1:44.791. But Christopher Mies looking good in the Audi here. Traffic allowing.
Yeah, Christopher Mies has got himself caught up with one of the, is that the 52? I can't quite say which of the 2 Ferraris it is, but he's lost time. You can see coming into turn 13, had to wait for the Ferrari to concede ground. And I mean, that'll be a frustration for Christopher Mies. He'd done a good job sector 1, got personal and overall quickest in sector 2. So what is left for the Santa Locke Junior Racing Team Audi? Can it go well? It's gone second, and he thinks that car was potentially a #1 time with what, just over 5 minutes of the session remaining.
Now, what about Alessandro Pierguidi in number 71 Ferrari? He is hustling on as well. Christian Klein goes 4th in the McLaren. That could be a dark horse, that car, because Christian Klein, Dennis Lin, Vincent Abril, very quick combination of drivers. Alessandro Pierguidi, we've rather missed out of Fanatec GT this season. It is great to have him back. We know exactly how good a driver he is. Rahal Frey's done an absolute best in her Ferrari out of the Iron Link stable in sector 1. Let's get Pierguidi across the timing line, though. Time to beat is a 1:44.791. He does a 44.721 to go fastest of all.
Yes, good run from Pierguidi, but Rahel Frey fastest overall in sector 1. What she's going to do in the middle sector, so if she can consolidate, well, a personal best. So great run from the Iron Dames car. Oh, midway through, and that's, oh dear.
That's Isaac Lopez that's off the road.
Yeah, that's down at turn 10, the exit of turn 10. How did it get there? I can't quite work it out, whether he spun and then spun back in across the circuit. It's an unusual place to see a car stationary, and that'll be a yellow flag zone, I think, very shortly.
Unless he's pulled off with a mechanical problem. But you're right, it's an unusual place to spin to. And because this is qualifying and because people want to be doing a time, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't end up stopping this, but with 4 minutes on the clock, he's got going again, that's good. So the race direction team give him time to restart the car, and he gets away. Christopher Hauser, right, here he is. Personal best, absolute best, a 1:44.7 is the time to beat, and a 44.8 puts the car 4th quickest.
So it's still the 71 Ferrari that's got that provisional pole on the 144.721. That's 0.3 or so of a second down. There is that provisional pole sitting, or the quickest. Again, he's had to back out of it now because he's come up behind a slower car, a car that's doing its particular run. But Pierre Guidi will be, I don't know whether he'll be frustrated or not. He's unchallenged by 70 thousandths of a second, if that's from Marco Bortolotti in the 63 Lamborghini. Emile Frey. Oh dear, another McLaren spinning at turn 15. Now, is that the cooler track temperatures catching out drivers, or is it just somebody's not been on top of their job?
Now this is number 2, Mauro Engel. And again, he's done a personal best in the first sector, which, in fairness, you would anticipate everybody to be doing now. The cars are getting a bit lighter, and the tyres are getting warmer, so they're able to push more confidently.
So he needs this final sector to be a real, I mean, it's got to be purple if he wants to get to be provisionally quickest in Q1. There's the Iron Dames Ferrari running behind. That was the car that secured provisionally quickest sector 1 about a minute or 2 ago. So Engel comes out of turn 16, and 142, 143, 144, 145, not good enough. And 145.0 is, what, 6 and a bit tenths of a second away from the time that car achieved yesterday. Alessandro Pierre Guidi goes personal and best overall, sector 1.
So Pierre Guidi, as you say, is top of the times by 700ths now from the Lamborghini, and Pierre Guidi should be quicker again this time because he's done another absolute best and a personal best in sector 2.
But he's looking forward. He can see traffic, and is that traffic about to start a lap? Is it traffic that's coming in? We've only 2 minutes of the session remaining, and he's closing very quickly indeed. And is he going to be compromised? Well, the Porsche dives, I think, to the pits. So Pierre Guidi might just be fortunate and be able to consolidate that provisional situation. So
he lost out in the last sector, looked slightly down. So yeah, about a tenth given away. Marcus Winkelhock has lost time in the middle sector. Bortolotti is pitted, so his work from Q1 is done. Klaus Bachler's Porsche is 3rd. And then 4th is Christopher Hauser. Mauro Engel is 5th. And here, Winkelhock down in 16th as he comes bouncing over the chicane curbs down towards turn 16 now.
And somewhat disappointingly, I would say, is that Marcello and the 88 Akodos ASP Mercedes only 7th quickest.
Now bear in mind that if the Ferrari, number 71, takes pole position on the combined times, it's a point. And every little helps, of course, when it gets to this point of the season. So it's not just the grid, it's also the point for pole that they're thinking about in these respective championship battles. We've got 46 seconds to go, and the pit lane is filling up now because most people that have already done a decent lap time are bringing the cars in to give the team more time in order to effect the driver change for Q2.
Another car further down that 9th place, WRT Audi 32, Dries van Thor. I'm on 45.2. I'm surprised. I would have thought that would mean they're not even the quickest Audi. Christopher Haaser is the quickest Audi, followed by Christopher Mies. Haaser's 4th, Mies is 6th, and then Dries van Thor in 9th. But Dries van Thor has just gone purple, and his with 12 seconds remaining, so he can complete this lap. So he's got purple sector 1, and the track will be emptying as he goes on to that final run for the 32 Audi. So can Dries van Thor pop a time in that will really see that car back where they think it ought to be, which is the front of the field? And up the hill he goes into turn 9. Sector 2 will be concluded as he drops down into turn 10. And the Lamborghini, is it coming back slowly, or Dries van Thor is going to catch that car probably in the entry into turn 13 or in that complex of 14, 15.
He's down in the middle sector though, he's dropped a bit of time. Traffic is up the road, as John rightly points out. Is Van Thor still on it? Yep, fights the car and accelerates towards turn 30. Yeah, this is going to be compromised, this lap, isn't it? The back marker is going to get out of the way, but Dries van Thor, slight hesitation before he committed to the inside line. It should be a lap that moves him up.
Start at 9:22.
voice of the race director Alain Adom in the background. Q2 starts at 9:22. Dries van Thor up towards the timing line, 9th at the start of the lap, 9th at the end of it. Got away from him in the middle sector.
Yeah, but I mean, very fractional. I mean, the times are so close amongst that top group of cars when there's a second covering the top 20. And Dries van Thor just lost a few tenths, not even tenths, hundreds of seconds, but it made no difference. He didn't improve. Rob Bell in the Jota McLaren in 8th position. That was a good run. We didn't see any of that car at all. So they're up to 8th position. Rob Bell will be happy with that. In fact, that is the leading McLaren amongst a strong field of McLarens with JP Motorsport and the Garage 59 crew.
So the best lap time, 1 minute 44.721 from Alessandro Pierguidi. And Danny Juncadella gets ready now to take over the Acudis ASP Mercedes for Q2. But that's a good start to the day, at least for Arne Links. Brings the car into contention. Yesterday, the car looked rather anonymous, but so much of yesterday was spent with people on old tyres, saving the good rubber for today. And so many drivers that we heard from were talking about the need to look after the rubber during the course of the race, especially if today's as hot as people are predicting it's going to become.
Yeah, I mean, the two sessions on Saturday were really more about going through, certainly the second one, the pre-qualifying session, was certainly about going through the motions and not showing your hand and not using rubber, because the track and ambient temperatures are very much higher than they were at this time yesterday morning, when track conditions to ambient and track were much, much cooler. But still, we've not seen anybody yet match or exceed the time set by the number 2 Get Speed Mercedes, Mario Engel.
Just a quickly look at the order then at the end of Q1. Antonio Fuoco's car, but Alessandro Pierguidi at the wheel. The fastest from Mirko Bortolotti's Lamborghini. So Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, the top 3. Klaus Bachler ahead of the best Audi of Christopher Hauser. Mario Engel in the best of the Mercedes AMG's 5th. And another Audi, Christopher Mies is 6th, ahead of Raffaele Marciello. McLaren 8th, Rob Bell. 9th, Dries van Thor. McLaren 10th also, Christian Klein, ahead of Philip Eng for BMW. Now that car looking more competitive today than yesterday. Fred Verviche is 12th. Ahead of Miguel Molina, the Silver Stars of the year. Jean-Baptiste Simonau, Benjamin Goethe, Thomas Neubauer, currently 14th thanks to JBS's lap. And a good effort by Mick Witthofer for Emil Frey Racing, 15th in the Lamborghini. 16th fastest was Marcus Winkelhock, ahead of Casper Stevenson. And then the first of the two driver entries, Ezequiel Perez Companc, he is 18th ahead of Rahal Frey. 20th, Janis Fitchia from Marius Zug. Ollie Milroy, 22nd in the Gold Cup class, leading in the championship. McLaren ahead of Nicolas Bart, Leo Roussel. Baptiste Moulin next from Manuel Maldonado. Diego Manchaca for Sky Tempesta Racing, 28th. Eddie Cheever from Dan Harper. And Sebastian Bode, 30th. 31st is the VSR Lamborghini that Michele Beretta drove ahead of Al-Faisal Al-Zubar in the Mercedes that topped pre-qualifying. Giorgio Roda's Porsche 33rd ahead of Hugo Vallon and then Alex McDowell. Isaac Lopez 36th ahead of Hugo Delacour, then Arnaud Robin, whose Audi was in the wall yesterday. Ralph Bone 39th, and then Maciej Blazek is 40th. Let's hear from then the man that's fastest in Q1. Alessandro Pierguidi is in the pit lane, and so too is Gemma Scott.
Alessandro, great to see you pushing so hard out there. It was purple after purple after purple.
Yeah, we will try. I try to help as much as I can Antonio to try to win this championship. So far we start quite good, but still a long way in front of us. Let's see in Q2 and Q3, but for sure the lap time will improve. Based on the weight effect of the car, the fuel will be less. But I was pretty happy about the car, about the balance we found. We know that in a cooler condition we are a bit quicker than the other manufacturer. But we will see. It's better to start like this, and we will see the rest.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
0.07 of a second, all that split the top 2. So a tiny, tiny margin, which illustrates just how competitive it is. The magic second covers the top 20. The top 20 cars in Q1 covered by 0.997 of a second.
Actually, normally we have got 30 cars covered by a second. But anyway, there we are. We've got
Let's try
Q2.
harder. Yeah, let's try harder.
Let's try harder. Well, we've got Q2 coming up. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And Alessandro Pierguidi sort of explaining a little bit, because with the car, as you do, David, also, because the cars are fueled up for Q1 and they don't refuel all the way through. That means whoever's in the car for Q3 will have the lightest time behind the wheel. and that's is not going to be Alessio Rivera. He's going to be in the car next. So for our Lynx, they've started off strongly, but so has the 63 Emile Frey Lamborghini. Both Italian brands could consolidate their provisional front row of the grid positions.
Now we are about a minute away from Q2 starting. So the drivers now are poised, mostly in the cars, but the tyre's not yet on when the instruction is given. On will go the rubber, and then the car will head down the fast lane. Jules Gounod ready for Q3. His sore back that put him out of action for British GT and the Sprint Cup round in Valencia, now thankfully behind him. So he's good to go, looking confident on Friday when he walked into the paddock. So it's good to have him in fine form for what should be a really good battle over the course of this final Fanatec GT endurance race of the European season. Right, we are 20 seconds or less, in fact, now from the green light going on. Temperature up to 16.4 degrees, the track temperature. And are we going to have another calm start to the session, or is it going to be a little bit more urgent? Let's find out, because the green lights are now about to go, and so the session is live, and it's going to be the Santaloc number 26 Audi first down the pit road. So, yep, we do have at least one taker. That's the lot for now.
Yeah, and again, same scenario. By the time he comes round to complete his outlap, then how many more cars will have filtered out on to the circuit and really trundling? Actually, they shouldn't really want to trundle around, because with the track temperature still on the low side, you want to get that temperature as quickly as you can. The danger is if you push very hard on that outlap, you might take a tenth or two out of that brand new set of tyres. So it's balancing getting temperature into the tyre, but not using the tyre too aggressively, so that when you go onto your first flying lap, the tyre's in that sweet spot.
Well, there's the Iron Dames Ferrari that is getting set to go. It should be Sarah Bovey to go next. Number 3, looking further down the pit lane at the Get Speed Mercedes team. Jeff Kingsley will go in that one, the Canadian driver. And one by one, cars are tempted out onto the circuit. So we've had a minute and a bit already.
I suppose it is still Sunday morning, and for many people this is a really rude hour of the day to be up.
But there is the time difference to factor in. I can't believe that they're listening to the Archers Omnibus. That's why they're not going out. It's too early for that, so there must be another reason. Maybe there's not enough espresso in the paddock this morning. Number 12's half asleep, the car that Mattia Drudi will take out. You almost want to walk up to a team and clap your hands and say, come on, the session's live, you know. They might get the message in a moment, because an Audi will come howling past the pits.
I mean, to me, the team is sitting in the pit lane. They've reckoned that we have got one shot. We're just going to go out and do one run. Whatever we get's whatever we get. They're not going to go out in. It's going to be go out, do your out lap, try and find a clear lap. And Cesar Gazou goes on to his first flying lap. And he's got, on his out lap, surprisingly, he's got a lot of purples and a few greens as well. I wonder why would that be? Do you think because he's the only first car on the racetrack, he's got purple and green?
I know what you mean about just doing one shot, but I can't remember any other circuit this year being quite so quiet for the start of each portion of qualifying.
I think you've summed it up. It's nothing to do with the competitors, it's the circuit.
Circuit, yeah.
It's what this circuit does. It's the most contrary racetrack in terms of what it gives you, in terms of right now, we've got, well, 12 minutes to go. It's roughly coming up to 25 past 9 in the morning. In 5 minutes' time, the track character will be different to where we are right now. And that's the trick of Barcelona, is putting yourself on the track at the point when the track is going to give you the best opportunity to get a solid time in.
So Cesar Gazou will set the target time for what it's worth, because, as John rightly says, he's one of only 4 people that are on the circuit right now. So talk amongst yourselves. Cesar Gazou, then, of course, we now will start to analyse not only the order within the subsequent 2 sessions, this Q2, then Q3, but also what that is doing to the average. So there'll be the lap time, but the average lap time, the order of the grid, allowing for any penalties anyway, won't reflect necessarily what we have in the individual part of qualifying. So the lap time, here it comes, is a 1:45.343.
That's not a bad effort.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that's I think that's a very good effort. First flying lap, 1:45.3. So I think that Santalok crew can be pretty happy with that first flying lap from Cesar Gazzo, and it'll be interesting to see how long it is before the rest. Jack Aiken, probably the most likely driver on track right now in the 63 Emile Frey Racing Lamborghini, that might improve on that 1:45.3, but he's just certainly on his out lap. He's coming into sector 3 as we speak, so he'll be going on to a flying lap very shortly. Waiting to see the car. Just from our commentary position, we can see the exit of turn 16. So waiting for Jack Aiken. That's not the Lamborghini, that's the Sky Tempesta Mercedes going onto its flying lap.
It is indeed, which comes over the timing line now, and this is Jonathan Hui at the wheel of it. So through he goes onto a flying lap now. The clock is running, and Cesar Gazzo's lap time remains the target. Tyler Cook in the Light Lambo has done a 48.3. Let's just ride with Jonathan Hui around the Circuit de Catalunya.
Okay, through his turns 1, 2, then there's long, never-ending, great corner. Oh, suddenly we're cutting back again, backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. Anyway, into turn 4, we missed what happened at the exit of turn 3 for Jonathan Hui. Round turn 4, let the car swing way out to the outside of the corner, then you bring it back to get over to the right-hand side of the track to make your entry into the always difficult entry into turn 5. The way the track goes from negative into positive and back again on the exit, then the straight line through the curve of 6, which is of no consequence whatsoever. Line it up for 7. Don't be over ambitious going into 7, but get it nailed when you transfer to the right to come out of turn 8, up the hill, get the curve on the inside, but watch on the exit because you're looking slightly skyward from the driver's position. Now you drop downhill. Now you can get on it. What gear you're in? 5th gear probably, all the way down, then a late break into turn 10. Swing it in, let the car run wide, but it's more staying in the middle of the track to get turn 11, which is now just a straight line as well. Never ending, we talk about never ending turn 12, one of these long corners here in Barcelona. Now a big break into turn 13, but you can roll it in there rather than brake too heavily. Then now you do have to brake for 14, then the cut back to 15. Don't use the curbs aggressively, that'll unsettle the car. Now, turn 16, the last chance you've got to make up any ground that you may have lost. Waiting to see what Jonathan Hui, he's got green and green and green, goes 3rd quickest in this sector and the session so far.
That's a good effort, as the average times now topped by number 26 Audi. Jack Aitken, however, has done an absolute best in the middle sector. You're still riding with Jonathan Hui, but that is Jack Aitken, but he's got traffic ahead of him coming out of turn 12.
Yeah, and there's not just one car, there's 2 cars. We've got past the Mercedes, but that will have had an effect on his time. Aiken was the driver I felt possibly had the opportunity to go quicker than Cesar Gazzo, who set that time very early, 1:45.1. So Jack Aiken has been compromised, comes up across start-finish line. Frederick Schandorf goes 3rd quickest. Jack Aiken manages in that sector, go quickest overall, 1:44.930.
And Frederick Schandorf has just put the number 7 McLaren second as he goes through. That's a really good lap. That is second on the average, but Frederick Schandorf quickest of anybody in Q2. So 1:44.655 now. Frederick Schandorf is fastest in Q2. That's a really good lap.
Good lap from McLaren as well.
Yeah.
We have not seen that pace. We've seen good pace from McLaren. Now, again, up at the top of the circuit, turn 9, garage 59. Dean McDonald slides down the inside of the 20 Mercedes. So can he continue? He's got greens 1st and 2nd sector. But Peter Niederhauser, 25 Santalok Audi, 0.4 of a second up sector 1. David, you're in heaven here.
Well, Patrick Niederhauser has been a little star this season, and he's underlining the point. You're looking at number 159 then, Dean McDonald coming down towards the chicane. Niederhauser behind him on track, personal best in the middle sector, absolute best in the 1st. Let's get Dean McDonald across the line then, having been the Pro-Am Sprint Cup champion, crowned at Valencia, comes across the timing line, goes through then 4th. That car is on the average, but 2nd in Q2. That's number 33 Audi that's got a transponder glitch, but it's the one ahead of him, Patrick Niederhauser, that could go quickest. Vincent Abril has just gone fastest in Q2. It's a McLaren 1-2-3 at the moment. Patrick Niederhauser up towards the timing line, and he goes fastest then. So Patrick Niederhauser does a 1:44.138, quickest in Q2, quickest on average.
Quickest overall lap all weekend by Patrick Niederhauser. So that is the benchmark time now. Jules Gunod looking at timing and scoring, thinking, where are we? Where is my Spanish co-driver? Well, I can't even see him so far. Danny Juncker, he is his 9th, or the overall classification so far. But anyway, that will be concerned because this is the car that he ultimately will be concerned about, the 71 Iron Lynx Ferrari.
Yeah, Danny Juncker, 9th in Q2 and 4th on aggregate, number 88 Mercedes then. So Alessio Rivera, this, remember, is the car that was fastest in Q1. Rivera has done 2 personal bests, comes then now through turn 13, drops down the hill into the chicane, sets it up, goes left, goes right. Try not to bounce over the curb, up the curb on the exit though, then nail the clipping point for turn 16. Onto the pit straight, timing line beckons, he will break the beam, and number 71 Ferrari does a 1:44.553, so it's 5th in the session and 2nd on average now is number 71 Ferrari, 2nd on the aggregate.
Don't know what's going on at McLaren's, but they've got 3 cars in the top 5 in this second Q session. So there is Dean McDonald. I mean, you're talking about Patrick Niederhauser being a star. Dean McDonald is a British star, shining very brightly indeed. Look, that fastest sector, sector 3.
Totally agree. And Dean McDonald then now fastest in Q2, a 1:44.109, best lap of the weekend. And that car is 6th on average. Now, what about Danny Juncker? Down, down, down in the 3 sectors. That's not a happy face.
Do you believe in the power of thought? Because that's what Jules Gunod is trying to do. He's trying to get Danny Juncker just to find another 3 or 4 tenths of a second.
And Christian Klein doing likewise. He doesn't have the cool hat that other team members have at JP Motorsport. Dennis Lynn there, standing over the back of the chairs, watching what's going on, and they're watching this man, Vincent Abril, hustle on in number 111 then. So this car, 4th on the grid provisionally, Vincent 3rd in Q2, snaked his way up the curve. That's where Christian had a spin yesterday and was totally honest about it, said I ran out of talent, but that car looks a real handful.
Oh, that was not nice at all going into turn 9, and he pulls over to the left and lets, and they got Dean McDonald coming through. The car looked like there was 0 grip at all, and now Vincent Abril was caught unawares by the fact when he turned the car. The whole car looked like it yawed itself across turn 9.
I'm jealous about the hat. I love the hat. Alessio Rivera goes through, 2nd fastest now. Number 71 is just a 10th down on the aggregate, still 5th in the session. Vincent Abril trying to regroup, having given away really 2 seconds in the middle sector.
So what happened to Vincent? Or Vincent goes and starts all over again. Ricardo Fella, the stand-in driver for Kelvin van der Linde in the 32 Audi, got a personal best there. He is coming down into turn 10.
Yeah, Ricardo Fella we've seen in DTM this year, and he's a quick driver, that's for sure, but brought into the WRT ranks to replace a poorly Kelvin van der Linde. We wish him well, and as he comes towards turn 13, Ricardo Fella dives into the right-hander, but he's dropped a bit of time in that middle sector. He wouldn't be in the car if WRT didn't rate him, because this has always been, if you like, the gun car. So you're not going to put somebody in that the team doesn't think is going to be able to deliver. So Ricardo Fella should be quick. Nicholas Nielsen's on a good lap. Ricardo Fella 6th on the average now, and he's 8th in the session.
So that middle sector, not a good sector for Ricardo Fella, but it shows that he's got enough pace in 1 and 3. But there is the sister car to the 71, Nicholas Nielsen behind the wheel. Again, that middle sector, whether that's traffic related or whether they just can't get the Ferrari hooked up. It's the final sector normally is the one that's the troublesome sector, but we've seen a lot of purples being scored in this. He's backed out of it, looking for, again, space. He's got 1 minute and 50 odd seconds. It'll be 1:45 or less when he comes across the start-finish line, so he'll be able to complete his final lap before checkered flag is unfurled. So
Nicholas Nielsen then tries to push in the last sector to get the speed up, the momentum up, ready for the next lap. Number 19 then is another rapid-looking Emil Frey Racing Lamborghini. It's Giacomo Altwe, Super Trofeo champion, Italian GT champion, who is at the wheel. and he's done a personal best in that first sector. Just looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah, but again, just the way the cars are floating through the exit of turn 9, we saw that mostly with Vance under Brill. The car looked really, really loose. And even the Lamborghini coming through the exit looked like it was just tippy-toeing its way out to the side of the racetrack.
So there is Altway. Again, middle sector, time lost. His teammate, Stuart White's done a personal best in the first sector as well. Number 40, Lamborghini, but down now into the chicane comes Altway. There is traffic up the road, but he might be able to dispense with that on the pit straight. Let's see. First up, we need to look at the lap time. So the time to beat in the session is a 1:44.109. The best average lap is a 44.5. And as Altway breaks the beam, it is a 1:45.134 then that he sets. This is Stuart White.
Ooh. Took a big chunk of the curve in the middle of 14 into 15. And again, that's not ideal in terms of composure of the car as it wants to find its way into that final turn. It ends up 18th. Another car well out of position is the number 2 Mercedes Get Speed. They were the quickest car on Saturday morning's practice session, and they're down in 14th in this session overall. 14th. So that's concerning for that car to be that far down when they were so strong yesterday.
But 6th on average, so it brings them back into the game. But in terms of a pure lap time, they are 0.8 of a second away from the top. At the moment, the magic second only includes, on average, 22 cars. Checkered flag is shown, so the session at an end. And Dean McDonald, the fastest in Q2, the fastest time of the weekend thus far.
Q3 will start at 9:45.
And that puts that 159 McLaren 8th combined. So, I mean, a stellar run. But equally, Patrick Niederhauser in the Audi was, what, 29 thousandths of a second off. I mean, it wasn't even the time it takes to blink. Matteo Drudi coming up to conclude his lap.
The margin between Niederhauser second in Q2 and Vincent Abril third is only 4 thousandths of a second. And if you go further down, the margin between Nico Müller, Audi, Benjamin Goethe, WRT teammate, Audi, 1,000th of a second. So we're talking tiny, tiny margins here.
Well, you're talking about literally maybe, well, let's talk in the old measure, feet or inches coming across the start-finish line. So Matteo Drudi comes across the line. Well, there's Matteo Drudi. It was Riccardo Fellow coming across the silver watch. Drudi concluding his lap through turn 12, so his personal best in first and second sectors. So what can this Audi, this is the car collection entrant.
Interestingly, because this is his final lap and it's a quick one, and so many other people have bailed for the pit lane, the road actually around him is very clear. And so Matthew Drudi does have a good chance of being able to improve. The lap time then is a 1:45.4, the average is a 45.1. So actually, wasn't that sparkling a lap in the end, as Jules Gounon is still having some attention to his sore back. That was sustained during the Hockenheim weekend, so the team trying to make sure that he's comfortable for when he gets in the car.
Yeah, I had a bit of treatment last night when I went back to the hotel, just in case it got a bit testy. You up in the Commodore booth, we get a bit excited. So I wanted all my arms and neck and shoulders to be limber and all set to go.
I'm delighted about that. By the way, you can get dressed now, John. That's the end of Q2, and we're getting closer then to knowing what the grid is going to look like for the final round of the championship later on. And so if you look at the combined times, this is the provisional order for the grid. Now, bear in mind, there might be grid drops for behavioural warning, point penalties or infractions in this as well. But right now, Christopher Mies and Patrick Niederhauser's efforts have put that car to the top ahead of Alessandro Pierguidi and Alessio Rivera. Then Mirko Bortolotti and Jack Aitken's Lamborghini third. Christian Klein and Vincent Abril's McLaren fourth. Then it's Porsche, then it is Mercedes. Alessio Picariello ahead of Luca Stolz. Riccardo Feller's efforts have just put number 32 to 7th, and Dean McDonald quickest in Q2, 8th, with then Danny Junkadea 9th, and Nico Müller 10th on the average. The Iron Dames fighting for the Gold Cup crown this weekend, 27th now on the average. And another car that's quite a long way back at the moment, 28th is the junior BMW that we've had thus far. Dan Harper drive along with Neil Verhagen, Max Hesse to go next. And outside the top 30, 31st currently is the Winwood Racing Mercedes that Jens Liebhauser and Lorenzo Ferrari have driven and go further down, and you find the Sky Tempesta Mercedes now after Eddie Cheever, Jonathan Hui have driven it 38th. The Barwell Lamborghini is 40th, James Dorlin yet to go, and Alex Malikin and Aitchen Guven, another of the 2 driver entries, currently 42nd. 48 cars in total, and of the final few, it is the number 112 JP Motorsport McLaren at the foot of the times. That has got a technical problem, we understand, so the team have been trying to get that ready to function properly. Norbert Siebler should take it out in Q3. Fast lane is open. So is there going to be a bit more urgency as you look at Valentino Rossi being strapped into number 46 Audi? He was talking in a press conference on Friday about his future plans, saying they are definitely for the circuits, although he enjoys the bit of rallying he's done. He says the tarmac is my home, so he's committed to car racing, not rallying, and he's also said that he's looking to Le Mans for 2024, but another season in this championship is the plan. Yeah, I think that's sensible. You know, you've spent a year learning the circuits, learning the car, learning the team, and then you want to sort of build on that in 23. So I would expect to see a further step forward. I mean, since the start of the season in Imola to where we are here this weekend in Barcelona, look at the times that Valentino was doing, and essentially he's probably picked up the best part of 3 seconds in certainly qualifying pace. And but it's because there's such a competitive field, it gets lost. That progress, you think, well, where is Valentino? He's still not at the front. We would like to see him at the front because that's where we've always seen him in his other motorsporting activities. And that's, again, something he touched on in this press conference, which is that he's pleased with his progress, but the frustration is finding that last 10th or 2 that the experts in a GT3 car that have done it for season after season after season know so well. And again, you think that, yes, he's come into GT3 racing at the highest level, but he's not had season after season of car racing like many of the others have. He's done a bit of car racing now and again. I mean, to be unkind, you might call him a veteran, because how many years did he spend on motorcycles? I mean, Valentino's what, late 30s now, maybe early 40s. So he's not a hot rod coming out of junior single-seater formulas. He's a seasoned, mature competitor, and your natural instincts are not to be a high-risk taker. And equally, there's a massive amount of expectation. I mean, everywhere we've been this year, the Rossi fan club has been huge. Even last night, leaving here at about 8 o'clock after the esports race, there were still fans in a queue by the WRT transporters hoping to get a glimpse and an autograph in the darkness. And they're here to watch him win as well. And there's an education process, in a sense, for the fans that have been brought across from MotoGP to GT racing. Why isn't Valentino winning in this? He wins in MotoGP. Well, this is a completely different art. You have co-drivers, you've got the balance of performance. There are all sorts of extra factors in GT racing that are so alien from MotoGP. I mean, the two disciplines are at opposite ends. I mean, just simply the braking capacity of a GT car probably is not dissimilar to that of a MotoGP motorbike. A MotoGP, whatever you want to call it, will do 200 miles an hour down the straight here in Barcelona. Might even do more. The top speed we've seen from a GT3 car is about 278, 279. So it's 40 kilometers down in terms of 175, 25 miles an hour down compared to a MotoGP bike. But of course, these cars, they brake really late. The corner speeds are probably very similar. And considering a MotoGP bike weighs, what, 200 and odd kilograms, maybe less, and a GT3 car is over 1,000 kilograms. So it's... You're a million miles apart from the two technologies. And as Valentino was also making the point, in MotoGP, it's down to you. In this, it's down to you, your co-drivers, to a degree, of course, the teams. And there are more external factors like safety cars, like full course yellows, like speeding in the pit lane, track limit abuses that can all go against you. Right, let's look at Q3 then, because that's going to start in about 5 seconds' time. And there are some nervous drivers watching their co-drivers now. Danny Juncadella is done for the moment, and Jules Gounon is strapped into number 88. And interestingly, there's a little bit more urgency about this, look, because instead of the green lights going on and barely anything happened, look, an actual stream of cars going onto the circuit. And it's green on green, dynamic motorsport Porsche. First and second out, and then Santo last. Anyway, it's,
yeah, a little bit more activity. Brendan Habib in his McLaren, having flown in overnight from a race in Atlanta. So let's wonder what he might do. Stepping into the car stone cold here in Barcelona. I mean, he may have well used a simulator to do some practice laps prior to coming here, but he's got to relearn the circuit, got to understand what the car does on these tires as opposed to the tires he was doing racing on yesterday in North America.
Antonio Fuoco biding his time before he goes out. So we've got, I was maybe a bit previous in saying we had a stream of cars. We had 5. We've now got 6 that have ventured out, but
a dribble of cars.
A dribble, is that what it is? Yes. I bow to your knowledge of dribbling. There is Brendan Arib, and let's see what he can do. He's found himself the bit of traffic that there is so far. But of course, we'll get everybody out, and then the circuit's going to get busy, and the Audi and the Porsche.
That was a little bit aggressive. I mean,
yeah.
Clearly, I'm not going to concede track position because I've got an opportunity on my first flying lap. I don't want to have 2 Porsches ahead of me. I'm happy to have 1, but not 2.
That was Luca Giotto in the Audi. The Porsches are those of Matteo Cairoli and Mikkel Pedersen at the moment. For the Dynamic Motorsports team, 83, Michel Gatting at the wheel of the Iron Dames Ferrari, and as John was saying, Brendan Arib, hot-footing it from the States, is in McLaren number 7. So there, Luca Giotto trying to get away now from Mikkel Pedersen in the Porsche. And we'll find out whether keeping track position so determinedly is going to be to good effect. So Giotto should be quick, and as long as the traffic allows, then it should be a decent lap time for him. The best yet is that 1 minute 44.109 of Dean McDonald. Can we get people into the high 1 minute 43s?
I'm not sure. I thought we might have seen a 43, certainly in that first session, but then the cars were at their heaviest. Now they're at their lightest, as the 15 minutes now becomes 12. We're watching Brendan Habib. I mean, it's a pretty big task he's set himself, not having driven here all weekend, to jump in Q3 and get out there and try to support his car and team.
Well, there, Michel Gatting presses on. And these are the Gold Cup contenders, don't forget. The Iron Dames Ferrari versus the Inception Racing McLaren. So they're worth keeping an eye to. And it would be quite something if the Iron Dames crew came through as category champions. Dennis Lind has just joined the track, by the way, in the 111 JP Motorsport McLaren. JP Motorsport, Patrick Krupinski's team. You're looking, though, at Michel Gatting coming in towards turn 13. And absolute bests, Matteo Cairoli and Mikkel Pedersen. So Porsche's looking good in the sectors, as here. We're about to see some lap times offered up, partly by the Ferrari, but also by Audi and Porsche ahead on the road. Matteo Cairoli does a 1:44.4. Giotto a 1:44.9.
Well, Michel Gatting goes through in a 1:45.2 in the 83 Iron Dames Ferrari. There she is, coming down into turn 1, lights flashing. So she's looking to make another lap, having now just done her first flying lap. And there's another of the Lamborghinis, so hopefully that will step aside, and it does so when they exit. No, oh, Dennis Lind. What have you done, Dennis?
Well, he's done the absolute best in the first sector.
But he spoiled it slightly in turn 7 and 8.
So Dennis Lind, British GT champion. Blockplan GT Series Asia champion as well, and the man that nowadays runs the Red Bull Esports program has junked 0.7 of a second in that middle sector, and possibly now has had to abort this lap, and he's regrouping for the next one.
Yeah, he backed out of it immediately. He overran in 7 and had to compromise through turn 8. He knew that that purple first sector was going to be a compromised middle sector, and that's what he's done. He's just backed out of it, saved the tyres, back to the Dynamic Motorsport Matteo Cairoli, currently 1:44.4 in this session, and personal best first and second sectors.
So Matteo Cairoli comes up towards turn 13. Former Italian Carrera Cup champion, Matteo Cairoli, comes then now out of the chicane. And best lap that he has done is a 1:44.407. Is this going to be any better? It is. It's a 1:43.955. So he's done it. He's into the 43s. Matteo Cairoli, best lap of the weekend.
And not only was it the fastest lap, it was the neatest and tidiest of all the fast laps you've seen. Matteo Cairoli did not try and be aggressive in those final 3 corners, certainly 14 and 15. Carried the speed all the way through and got that stunning final sector of 34.2, and now the first and only car to get into the 1:43.
And this means now that Jules Gournot is ready to go into battle. We've had the first third of the session, so 5 minutes done. And 88 Mercedes then, which is currently 18th on the average, needs to get out on track and bolt in a good lap. Might only be one shot. Let's see what he can do. I think most people are getting 2 out of a set of tyres, aren't they?
Well, they've got 8 minutes, and again, the back of the McLaren sort of seems to be grips and it lets go.
That was Nikolai Sheargard about to start a lap in the Garage 59 entry. Quick young Danish driver goes over the timing line, and he's being chased then by Enrique Chavez, also very, very fast McLaren driver behind him. So they head into turn 1.
So this is the car that Dean McDonald set that quickest sector or qualifying 2 in. So that car is, we know, a quick car, but we've only seen one car break the 1:44.2 lap. And that's the 54 Porsche. And what can Nicolas Shelgard do coming up to the end of sector 1 shortly? Green, purple, or in there, he's got a green.
So first proper flying lap. So, and a spin, and that's the Mad Panda Mercedes, isn't it, that has looped it?
And it looks like it might be looping it again because he gave it too much gas on the grass. Gas on the grass.
Well, hopefully it's not going to be in the way. Road hopefully will be clear, because of course if there's a yellow out, then that affects what people can do in that sector as way up the curb bounces Sheargard.
Yeah, again, it's the way the McLaren, when it's on throttle, on power, the back end just slides around a minute. I think that's what we saw in the previous session with Vance and Brill, but certainly, well, purple, look at that, 0.2 of a second virtually up in that middle sector in spite of the back of the car looking like it's just on the ragged edge. So Sheargard could eclipse Matteo Cairoli's. Dennis Linden has just become, by the way, the fastest McLaren of all, going 4th in this session. But this should be a time that Dennis Lind will maybe look to, as Sheargard could potentially become even the second car below the 1:44.
Well, Sheargard here could also be in the 43s, couldn't he? Because as he breaks the beam, this has been looking a good lap. It is. It's a 43.956. Then he's a 1,000th of a second slower than Matteo Cairoli. 1,000th of a second.
2 cars now have broken that 1:44 barrier. A Porsche and this car on screen, the McLaren.
If anybody says that GT racing isn't close, show them this timing screen. 1,000th of a second between the top 2 cars in Q3. It also means that there are 93 thousandths between them on average. So it's Porsche, McLaren, Audi, on average, the top 4. Remember Audi?
I certainly do,
well,
but
Chris
that Audi
is the best.
That Audi is not the 32, which is the one we always think is the benchmark, but they have not been this year as often as normal, the benchmark Audi team.
Well, there's number 20, which should now be Dominic Baumann, who, as we were discussing in the sessions yesterday, has given away some points because they elected to race in the Bronze Cup at Spa. Dominic Baumann couldn't race as a bronze because of his driver grading, and so he has been removed from the points from Spa, so that he sits on the same number of points in Pro-Am with his co-drivers, and therefore he and Valentin Pierberg can win as a team, which is quite a nice touch from Dominic Baumann. Because otherwise he could be Pro-Am champion without having done all the rounds at the expense of the man that's effectively footed the bill. Here is Enrique Chavez, and Dominic Baumann has gone 4th in the session, incidentally. Right, what about Chavez? This looks all right, doesn't it, in the McLaren?
It's maybe not as convincing as Sheargard was, but it's on the timing, best in first and second sector, 14th in this session, 1:44.4, so that's a good run. But Charles Vetz in the 32 Audi, personal best, first and second sectors, again, as you would expect from this car and this team in their final race for the Audi brand.
So Charles Weerts goes across the timing line. That puts the car 4th now on the average, and in the session 4th quickest as well. Now what about Gounod? He's on track. He's 9th so far in Q3 and comes now into turn 3. So 88 is 7th, and number 71 Ferrari is back to the top on the average, and don't forget that would give them the point for pole position.
So Jules Gounod, and a lot of hard work for the Frenchman as he comes down the hill out of the exit of turn 4, that onboard shot, into 5. So, well, it's a personal best for Gounod. Need a purple or 2 to help his cause. Looks pretty good all the way through 7 and 8, up the hill, and into this blind apex. And then where's the exit? Well, it's just there. Then the drop down the hill, so we're coming up to the conclusion of sector 2. Will it be green? Will it be purple? No. And that's going to be a disappointment. That's not going to help the overall position or this car's classification in qualifying 3.
He's needing to find about 0.6 of a second to be right up at the pointy end. The best Mercedes in the session currently is that of Dominic Baumann. So Jules Gounod comes down towards the chicane. He's got one more lap if he can really wring the neck of this car, and he will stay out there. So let's see what this lap is. Needs to get him further up the grid, even if it's not the ultimate fastest. Good sectors might help. Goes through 8th fastest then. So that puts Jules Gounod 8th on the grid, but still only 10th in the session. He has got time for 1, maybe even 2 more laps if the tyres permit.
So busier bit of the racetrack as we watch. Well, this is the 32 Audi, that's Charles Weerts. We've just seen the times from Fukuoka, but look at those times, that final sector. So clearly he was looking for clear track position, as we ride on board with Charles Weerts as he comes through the exit of turn 3. So the 32 Audi is overall on the second, provisionally on the second row of the grid, alongside the 66, the attempt of Dennis Marshall. So Gounod again, but look, sector 1 down over his previous best. So it's not coming together for the 88 so far in qualifying.
It's not. And the frustration is that 71 Ferrari, the championship rival, is on pole position at the moment with 2 minutes of qualifying to go. So there are some worried faces in Jérôme Policon's ASP team, as here is Gounod again down in that middle sector. And I can't see anything magic happening before the end, because he's getting slower and every lap is taking a bit more life out of that new set of tyres. So provisionally the car's going to be on row 4 and the championship rival on pole position.
He should just back out of it, save the tyres, and then he will have 1 more lap when it comes across start-finish line. I mean, it's all relevant. How much you back out of it is, I mean, he's 3/10 down in that middle sector. He thinks he's probably backed out by about 3 seconds. Now he's got 1 more lap to get a time that will drag the 88 Mercedes up onto an overall qualifying position that will give him a chance, because this is the car that really is looking. Forget about what you see on screen now. It's what he will do once he goes on to his final lap, and he's got a, well, he's got maybe 100 meters, 150 meters between himself and the car he's pursuing, which is one of the sister Ferraris they have, Corsa. I would imagine they would be helpful to Fukuoka. Look how wide coming through turn 3 the 88 Mercedes was.
Well, he's gone quicker, but my fear is that for exceeding track limits he might not keep this lap. So we need to keep an eye now as to whether or not Jules Gounod is going to be in stride for that. He was certainly way wide, but the net result of that was that in the first sector, then he has gone faster by 1/10 of a second.
Oh yes, oh, was he ever wide?
And improved in the first sector. That might get looked at.
And he was actually wide much earlier in the exit of the corner than he ought to have normally been. So not an awful lot of left grip remaining for Gounod on this run down into turn 10. Checkered flag will be out in a few seconds.
Down in the middle sector, he's lost time in the middle. So again, as the team watches on, so Jules Gounod trying everything that he possibly can up to the checkered flag. And into turn 13, drops down towards the chicane. Is he going to complete the lap because he was down demonstrably so in that middle sector? No, he aborts it. So Jules Gounon comes into the pit lane, and the net result of his efforts are 12th in Q3 and 8th on the grid. And the car they're fighting against for the championship is on provisional pole position. Game on, isn't it?
Yes, and disappointingly for the 88 crew, they're not the quickest Mercedes. That's the Dominic Baumann, number 20, and the SPS Motorsports. I don't know where it's gone wrong for Akuda's ASP here in qualifying. That's going to be a big fight they'll have on their hands, especially if Ferrari consolidate and be able to start from provisional pole, which looks like they're going to do.
So, Alessandro Pierguidi, Alessio Rivera and Antonio Fuoco are on pole position by 0.003 of a second from Klaus Bachler, Alessio Picariello and Matteo Cairoli. And then Mirko Bortolotti, Jack Aitken and Albert Costa are third on the grid. Albert Costa, of course, Spanish driver, and big following for him here as well. And after a frustrating season for him, he's another driver keen to go out on a high. I mean, we've talked about the championship, but bear in mind, of course, there are lots and lots of people on this grid that couldn't give a whatnot about the championship. They want a win or a podium at least before the end of the season, so they're not remotely concerned about what's going on for the championship. They're concentrating on their race, and that's got to be factored into the calculations of the other teams. So there's Jules Gounon perhaps complaining about the balance of the car.
Well, those hand movements, you can see they're doing this, indicating that there didn't seem to be an awful lot of good news coming through the steering wheel for Gounon, and unfortunately they're starting rather further back than they would like.
Indeed so. Alessandro Pierguidi, Alessio Rivera, Antonio Fuoco are on the front row on pole position with Klaus Bachler, Alessio Picariello and Matteo Cairoli's Porsche for company. Mirko Bortolotti, Jack Aitken, Albert Costa fourth, and a great effort by Manuel Maldonado, Dean McDonald and Nikolai Schiergaard to top silver by a massive margin and to be fourth on the grid. Also the best McLaren ahead of Christian Klein, Vincent Abril and Dennis Lin, and Christopher Mies, Patrick Niederhauser with Lucas Legere take 6th. 7th, Dries Van Thor, Ricardo Feller, Charles Wirtz, and only 8th, Raffaele Marciello, Danny Juncadella and Jules Gounon, with Mauro Engel, Lucas Stoltz and Stein Scotthorst 9th, and Christopher Hauser, Mattia Drudi and Luca Giotto rounding out the top 10. Jota McLaren 11th, the Iron Dames 24th at the end of the session, and that third part of qualifying giving us the best time of the weekend, Matteo Cairoli doing a 1:43.955. Further down the order then, a few cars out of position. The Rover Racing number 98 BMW struggled a bit yesterday, still not really sparkling. It's down in 18th, 7/10 away on the average. Sister car 23rd, Dan Harper, Neil Verhagen and Max Hesser. 36th is where Brendan Aribe, Ollie Milroy, Frederick Schandorf will start. That puts them quite a long way back then behind the Iron Dame, so they've got some work to be doing in number 7. They're ahead though of the Sky Tempesta Racing Mercedes. And in 45th, Nicola Goma, Mike Parisi and Loris Cabiru in the AGS Events Lamborghini. 48 cars in total, and at the back is the troubled 112 McLaren, but what happened to 51 Ferrari? We never really saw that, particularly after Q1, but it's 47th on the grid, so problems in the second and third parts of qualifying.
Yeah, not going to be a lot of assistance to the sister car, other than at some point there will be overtaking and back markers, and that's the only way that the 51 might be able to assist is in an overtake or a lap from the race leading, assuming that is the race leading 71 Ferrari.
Well, let's just look back at qualifying then, that began in terms of Q1 and Q2 very calmly, very quietly. We did have this spin from Tyler Cook coming into turn 10, who looped it big time. And initially, Alessandro Pierguidi the fastest in Q1, and that was a good effort to set up the qualifying session for number 71 Ferrari. Danny Juncadella went out second in number 88 Mercedes and was able to bring that car sort of into contention. Mirko Bortolotti and Jack Aitken had been doing good things in number 63 Lamborghini, but Dean McDonald was the real star of Q2. He went fastest with a 1:44.1. Up to that point, the best time of the weekend. Vincent Abril and Dennis Lind, also McLaren drivers, very quick in their respective sessions as well. And so was Patrick Niederhauser, and so was Christopher Mies, because we're talking of thousandths of a second here across the cars. Jules Gounon, despite his sore back, getting himself ready, and he went out in Q3, threw everything at it, but it just did not come, as Nikolai Sjægaard had a bit of a slide that was able to get that car second in Q3 and to start fourth on the grid. And then there was contact there as Dennis Lin got into the back of number 51 Ferrari. That's why the car had big problems and Dennis Lin had to head to the pit lane. So, Championship Showdown coming up 3 o'clock local time. Join us for that if you can, but for now, from qualifying in Barcelona, it's goodbye.